My wife told me she married the wrong person, so I became a different person. She hated it even more. My wife Lauren said it during an argument about my job. I was a high school history teacher making $52,000 a year, and she'd just found out her college roommate's husband had made partner at his law firm. I married the wrong person, she said, standing in our kitchen with her arms crossed. Jenna's husband just bought her a beach house. Meanwhile, I'm clipping coupons. I stood there holding a dish towel, water dripping from my hands. I thought you knew what you were getting when you married a teacher. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. I thought you'd have ambition. I thought you'd want more. But you're content being mediocre forever. The word mediocre hit like a slap. I'd been teaching for 8 years, won 2 teaching awards, mentored dozens of struggling students. But to Lauren, I was mediocre because I wasn't rich. What do you want me to do? Quit and become a lawyer overnight? I want you to be someone who cares about success, about providing, about being more than just adequate. She walked out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there with soap suds drying on my hands. That night, I lay awake thinking about her words. Married the wrong person. Not that she was unhappy, not that we had problems. She'd married the wrong person entirely, like I was a mistake she'd made in her 20s and was now stuck with. The next morning, I started researching. If Lauren wanted someone different, I'd become someone different. Not gradually, not through couples therapy or long conversations. I'd transform completely and show her exactly what she'd asked for. I found a headhunter who specialized in career transitions. His name was Victor Lang, and his office was downtown in a building with marble floors and uncomfortable modern furniture. He looked at my teaching resume and laughed. You want to make 6 figures within a year? As a teacher? I want to make whatever it takes to not be called mediocre. Victor's expression shifted. He'd heard that tone before, the desperation of a man trying to save his marriage through money. Okay, but you'll have to let go of everything you think you are. Teaching, mentoring, helping kids. That version of you needs to die. Good, I said. She married the wrong person, so that person is gone. Victor made calls. Within 2 weeks, I had 3 interviews lined up for sales positions at tech companies. They wanted aggressive, hungry people who'd work 80-hour weeks chasing commissions. Perfect. I quit my teaching job without telling Lauren. Just handed in my resignation to Principal Harris, who looked shocked. Daniel, you're one of our best teachers. What happened? I'm becoming someone else, I said, and walked out before he could respond. Lauren came home that evening to find me in a suit. Not my wedding suit or funeral suit, but a new charcoal gray one that cost $800. I'd also gotten a haircut at a place that served whiskey while they cut, charged $75, and made me look like I worked in finance. What's this about? She touched the lapel of my jacket. Interview. I start Monday. Tech sales at Nexus Solutions. Base salary $85,000 plus commission. They said top performers make over $200. Her eyes widened. You quit teaching? You married the wrong person, so I'm becoming the right one. I loosened my tie. No more summers off. No more grading papers at the kitchen table. No more being adequate. Something flickered across her face. Not quite happiness. More like surprise mixed with uncertainty. Daniel, I didn't mean you had to quit your job. I was just frustrated. No, you were right. I was mediocre. Content with enough instead of hungry for more. That ends now. She opened her mouth to respond, but I walked past her to the bedroom. I had reading to do. Sales books with titles like Eat What You Kill and The Closer's Bible. The person she'd married would have found these books disgusting. The new me would memorize every page. My first week at Nexus Solutions was brutal. The sales floor was open concept. 70 desks crammed together with everyone's conversations bleeding into each other. My manager, Craig Donnelly, was 32 and made $300,000 last year. He showed me my desk and pointed to a whiteboard with names and numbers. That's the leaderboard. Top 5 sellers get bonuses. Bottom 5 get fired. You're starting at the bottom, so climb fast or you're gone. I looked at the names. People with sales to companies I'd never heard of. Numbers that represented thousands of dollars in revenue. How fast do people usually climb? The ones who make it? First sale within 2 weeks. If you go a month without closing, you won't survive here. Craig walked away, already on his phone with another client. I sat at my desk and stared at the computer screen showing my pipeline. Empty. 0 prospects, 0 calls scheduled, 0 progress toward not being mediocre. The guy next to me, Ashton Burke, leaned over. First day? Yeah. Advice? Stop thinking like whoever you used to be. This job requires you to lie, manipulate, and pressure people into buying shit they don't need. If you can't do that, leave now before you waste everyone's time. I thought about Lauren's face when she'd said mediocre. I can do that? Good, because nice guys finish at the bottom of that board, and the bottom means fired. Ashton went back to his call, smoothly lying to someone about delivery timelines that were impossible to meet. I made 63 calls that first day. got hung up on 58 times, had 4 conversations, scheduled 1 follow-up call. My throat hurt from talking, my ears rang from wearing the headset, and I'd learned more about human rudeness in 8 hours than 8 years teaching teenagers. Lauren asked how it went when I got home at 8 p.m. Fine. Made some progress. She'd cooked dinner, something she rarely did anymore. Pasta with chicken, my favorite. She was trying, sensing maybe she'd pushed me too far, but I wasn't angry. I was focused. Did you close anything? Not yet. Takes time to build pipeline. I used the jargon I'd learned, talking about qualified leads and conversion rates. She listened with an expression I couldn't read. After dinner, I went to the spare bedroom I'd converted into an office and practiced my pitch until midnight. Lauren came in once, saw me talking to my reflection in the dark window, and left without saying anything. The new me scared her a little. Good. She'd asked for different. My first sale came on day 11. A small company in Ohio needed software they didn't understand, and I convinced them they couldn't survive without it. $42,000 in revenue, $1,600 in commission. Craig called it out on the sales floor and everyone clapped, the hollow applause of people who saw me as competition. Ashton shook my hand. See? You're not a nice guy after all. That weekend, I took Lauren to an expensive restaurant, the kind where they don't list prices, and the waiter describes each dish like it's art. She wore a black dress, and I noticed men at other tables looking at her. She'd always been beautiful, but tonight, she glowed with something else. Pride, maybe. Pride that I wasn't mediocre anymore. This is nice, she said, sipping wine that cost $30 a glass. You seem different. I am different. That's what you wanted. I know, but... She trailed off, playing with her napkin. But what? Nothing. It's good. You're doing really well. But her smile didn't reach her eyes, and when I reached for her hand across the table, she pulled away to grab her wine glass. Something had shifted, but I couldn't identify what. After dinner, walking to the car, she said, "Do you miss teaching?" No. The lie came easily now. I missed it desperately. Missed my students asking questions about World War II. Missed seeing them understand something for the first time. Missed feeling like I mattered to someone's life beyond a sales quota. You don't miss it at all? You loved those kids. I loved being adequate, being mediocre. I unlocked the car. That version of me is dead, Lauren. You killed him when you said you married the wrong person. She got in without responding, and we drove home in silence. 3 months into the new job, I was 7th on the leaderboard. Made $53,000 in commission on top of my base salary. We'd paid off Lauren's student loans, upgraded both cars, and started looking at bigger houses. I worked until 9 most nights, Saturdays until 3, sometimes Sundays when big deals needed closing. Lauren had dinner with friends while I worked, went to yoga classes, took weekend trips I was too busy to join. We were ships passing in our own home, me chasing money and her enjoying the results without me. Craig promoted me to senior, account executive after 6 months, 100,000 base salary, higher commission rates, my own office with walls and a door. I'd become exactly what Lauren wanted, successful, ambitious, driven, not adequate, but she barely noticed. When I told her about the promotion over takeout Chinese, she said, "That's great," without looking up from her phone. "That's it? That's great? What do you want me to say, Daniel? You're doing well. I'm happy for you." She set down her phone. "But you're never here. You work constantly. I barely see you. I'm building the life you wanted, the beach house life, the not clipping coupons life. I know, but I didn't think it would mean losing you completely." She stood, leaving her food half-eaten. "The person I married is gone. You made sure of that." I sat at the table alone, her words echoing. "The person I married is gone." Yes, that was the point. She'd married the wrong person, so I'd killed him and become someone new. And now she was realizing she'd married the wrong person twice. At the 1-year mark, I was making $230,000, 3rd on the leaderboard, consistently closing major deals. I'd learned to lie without flinching, to manipulate decision-makers, to pressure people into contracts they'd regret. I'd become exactly what Ashton had described on my first day. Not a nice guy. I'd also become a stranger to my wife. We had sex maybe once a month, always quick and mechanical. Barely talked beyond logistics about bills and schedules. Slept on opposite sides of the bed like college roommates who didn't particularly like each other. The big house we'd bought had 4 bedrooms and felt empty even when we were both home. Lauren started therapy. I found the bills from Dr. Stephanie Graham's office, $200 a session, once a week. When I asked about it, Lauren said, "I needed someone to talk to since you're always working. Talk to me. I'm right here." "You're not here, Daniel. You're physically present sometimes, but you're not actually here. You're this driven, cold version of yourself that I don't recognize." I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw unhappiness etched into her face, dark circles under her eyes, weight loss that made her cheekbones too prominent. She was miserable, and I'd been too busy chasing the leaderboard to notice. "What do you want from me?" "I want my husband back." The one who cared about his students and talked about history like it mattered. The one who wasn't obsessed with money. That husband was mediocre. You told me that. I was wrong. Her voice cracked. I was frustrated and stupid, and I said something horrible. But I didn't mean for you to become this. She gestured at me in my suit, my expensive watch, my perfectly styled hair. This isn't you. This is exactly me. This is who I became because you married the wrong person. I grabbed my briefcase. I have a client dinner. Don't wait up. I left her standing in our expensive kitchen in our big, empty house and drove to a restaurant where I'd lie to a potential client about capabilities our software didn't have. The old me would have been disgusted. The new me didn't feel anything at all. My brother Cameron called the next week, concerned. Lauren reached out. She says you're different, worrying different. I'm successful different. She wanted success. She wants her husband back, man. She's scared she broke something that can't be fixed. I was in my office, looking at my pipeline for the quarter. 2 major deals about to close, another 6 in negotiation. Numbers that would put me second on the leaderboard by month's end. She broke the mediocre version. I built something better. Daniel, listen to yourself. You sound like a robot. When's the last time you did something for fun? Saw your friends? Did anything besides work? I couldn't remember. My entire life was work, sleep, and avoiding my wife's disappointed gaze. I'm fine, Cameron. You're not fine. You're having some kind of breakdown disguised as success. Take a vacation. Talk to Lauren. Fix this before it's too late. He hung up, and I stared at my phone. My brother thought I was broken. My wife thought I was unrecognizable. But I was doing exactly what she'd asked, becoming someone who wasn't mediocre, someone who provided, someone who was more than adequate. Lauren served me with divorce papers on a Sunday morning. I was working in my home office, and she walked in with an envelope. I can't do this anymore. She set the envelope on my desk. I wanted you to have ambition, not lose your soul. I opened the envelope. Irreconcilable differences. 50-50 split of assets. She'd already found an apartment and was moving out that week. You got what you wanted, I said. Big house, nice cars, money to spend. This is what you asked for. I asked for you to care more about our life together. Instead, you became obsessed with proving something that didn't need proving. She sat in the chair across from my desk. I married the wrong person, Daniel. I said it a year ago, and I was wrong. I married exactly the right person. But then I broke him. And what's left is someone I don't know. So what? You destroy who I was? I become who you wanted? And now you leave because you don't like the result? I stood up, anger finally breaking through the numbness. You don't get to do this. You don't get to wreck me and then walk away. I wrecked you? Lauren's eyes filled with tears. You wrecked yourself. I said one stupid thing in anger, and you used it as permission to become someone you hate. Look at yourself, Daniel. When's the last time you smiled, laughed, did anything that made you happy? I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't. Happiness wasn't something I'd thought about in a year. Success? Yes. Numbers? Definitely. But happiness? That belonged to the mediocre version of me that she'd despised. Sign the papers or don't. I'm leaving either way. Lauren stood. I hope you find yourself again. The real you, not this corporate monster you think I wanted. She left my office, and I heard her packing in the bedroom. 2 hours later, she was gone. I sat in my home office surrounded by plaques and awards for sales performance, in a house that cost $800,000, wearing a suit that cost more than a week of my old teaching salary, completely alone. Exactly what I'd earned. The divorce finalized in 3 months. No children, clean split of assets. Lauren took the house since I was never there anyway. I moved into a downtown apartment that was all glass and steel, the kind of place that said success but felt like a hotel room. Craig congratulated me on losing the distraction. Now you can really focus. Push for #1 on the board. I pushed. Worked 90-hour weeks. Closed massive deals that earned me trips to Hawaii and Las Vegas that I took alone. Made $340,000 that year. First place on the leaderboard. Top performer in the entire company. Craig asked me to speak at the National Sales Conference, and I stood on a stage in front of 800 salespeople and told them how to kill their competition, how to manipulate, how to win. They applauded, and I felt nothing. My brother stopped calling after I missed his daughter's birthday party for a client meeting. My college friends stopped inviting me places when I canceled for work the 5th time in a row. My entire life was work, and work was all I had left. 2 years after Lauren said I'd married the wrong person, I ran into her at a coffee shop. She was with a man, laughing at something he'd said. He wore jeans and a Teachers Association t-shirt, looked comfortable and kind and exactly like I used to look. When she saw me in my suit with my phone pressed to my ear during a client call, her expression shifted to something like pity. I ended the call and walked over. Lauren, Daniel, hi. She touched the man's arm. This is Jeffrey. He teaches at the same school I volunteer at. Jeffrey extended his hand. Nice to meet you. Lauren's mentioned you. I shook his hand and wondered what she'd said, that I'd transformed myself trying to please her, that I'd lost everything becoming someone else. You look good, I told Lauren, though it felt like swallowing glass. She did look good, happy, relaxed in a way she never was during our last year together. So do you. Very successful. She meant it as an insult, I could tell. Success was what had destroyed us. Jeffrey excused himself to get their drinks, and Lauren studied me. Are you happy, Daniel? I'm successful. That's not what I asked. It's the answer you got. I checked my watch, an expensive automatic piece I'd bought to celebrate hitting my sales goal. I have a meeting. Of course you do. She touched my arm briefly. I'm sorry for what I said, about marrying the wrong person. I've regretted it every day since. Don't. You were right. You did marry the wrong person, so I became someone different. Problem solved. I walked away before she could respond, got in my car, and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, trying to remember why I'd wanted to become this person. The answer was supposed to be her, to keep her, to prove I wasn't mediocre. But she'd left anyway, and now I was stuck being someone I despised, making money I didn't need, chasing goals that meant nothing. My therapist, Dr. Marcus Liu, asked me why I kept the job if I hated it so much. I'd started seeing him after a panic attack in my office, the first time my body had physically rebelled against what I'd become. Because going back means admitting I was wrong, that I destroyed myself for nothing. You destroyed yourself trying to save your marriage, but the marriage ended anyway. So what are you doing now? Proving the point, I guess, that I could become what she wanted, even though she didn't actually want it, even though it cost you everything else. Dr. Liu leaned forward. Daniel, you're punishing yourself. Every day you stay in that job is another day you torture the person you used to be. Good. He deserved it for being mediocre. He deserved it for being human, for being content, for finding meaning in teaching instead of money. Dr. Liu set down his pen. What would it take for you to forgive yourself for not being enough for Lauren? I sat with that question. What would it take? Time travel to undo her words? Success so massive she'd regret leaving? Revenge? I didn't know. She's happy now, I said finally, with someone who's exactly what I used to be, a teacher, someone adequate. And that makes you feel like I destroyed myself for nothing. She wanted a teacher all along, just not me. The session ended with homework I didn't do. Write a letter to my old self, explaining why I'd killed him. I couldn't do it. Couldn't face the person I'd been and justify what I'd become. 3 years after Lauren said she'd married the wrong person, the company promoted me to VP of Sales. $400,000 base salary, stock options, corner office. I was 35 years old and had everything society said meant success. I was also having panic attacks twice a week, drinking too much, and hadn't felt genuine emotion in months. Craig retired, made his money, and moved to Florida. Before he left, he took me for drinks and said, "You know what the secret is? Knowing when to stop. Most guys who get to your level, they can't turn it off. They work until they die, chasing something that was never real to begin with. What was never real? Enough. There's never enough money, enough success, enough proof that you matter. You keep chasing it thinking the next level will finally make you happy, but it won't. So you either figure out what actually matters, or you die empty." He paid the bill and left. I sat at the bar alone, surrounded by other people in suits having the same conversation about deals, and numbers and quarterly targets. All of us chasing enough. That night, I opened my laptop and looked at teaching positions. They were all still there, always hiring because the pay was inadequate and the work was exhausting. $45,000 a year, summers off, grading papers, parent conferences, everything I'd walked away from. I found my old principal's email and wrote a message. I made a mistake. Is there any chance you'd consider rehiring me? I hit send before I could overthink it and closed my laptop. The VP of Sales writing to a high school principal begging for his old life back. Lauren would have laughed at the irony. Principal Harris called the next morning. "Daniel, I was surprised to get your email. I know it's been 3 years. I understand if you've moved on. Actually, we have an opening. Mr. Reynolds retired and we need someone to teach AP history. The pay is—" "I know what it pays. I don't care." The words felt like freedom. "I want to come back. I want to be who I was before I destroyed him." Harris was quiet for a moment. "Something happened, didn't it? Something that made you leave?" "My wife told me I was mediocre, that she'd married the wrong person. So I became someone different, and it cost me everything. And now? Now I want to be mediocre again. I want to be adequate and content and all the things that weren't enough for her, because they were enough for me." Harris offered me the job. I started in the fall, 3 months away. I wrote my resignation letter that afternoon, and the CEO tried to convince me to stay, offered me more money, more stock, more everything. I told him I was becoming a teacher again, and he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. Or maybe I'd found it. The news spread through the office fast. The VP of sales was quitting to teach high school. People thought I was having a breakdown. Ashton Burke, still grinding on the sales floor, pulled me aside. "You're really doing this? Walking away from 400 grand to make teacher money?" "Yeah." "Why?" "You're at the top. You won." "No, I didn't. I lost everything that mattered trying to get here. Now I'm trying to get it back." Ashton looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Whatever, man. Your funeral." My last day at Nexus Solutions was in June. They threw me a party with a cake that said good luck. People made speeches about my sales records and leadership. I smiled and thanked everyone and counted the minutes until I could leave. I walked out of that building for the last time carrying a box of personal items that meant nothing to me, got in my car, and drove to the school. The parking lot was empty for summer. I sat there remembering the version of me who used to arrive early every morning, excited to teach, who'd stay late helping students prepare for exams, who'd found meaning in young people understanding history. That person had been enough, had been happy. I'd killed him because someone said he wasn't good enough, and I'd spent 3 years missing him. I started teaching again in August. First day back, I stood in my classroom looking at empty desks and remembered why I'd loved this. The potential in every student. The chance to make someone care about the past so they could understand the present. The work that mattered more than any sales quota. My students were mostly juniors and seniors taking AP history. Smart kids who wanted to learn. I taught them about the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World Wars I and II. We debated causes and effects. They wrote essays I graded at my kitchen table just like before. One student, Maya Patel, stayed after class the first week. Mr. Reynolds used to say you were the best teacher he'd ever worked with, that you made history come alive. Mr. Reynolds was generous. He also said you left to do something else. Why'd you come back? I thought about how to answer that. How much truth a 17-year-old needed. I became someone I wasn't for someone who didn't want me to change. Then I realized being myself mattered more than being what someone else wanted. Maya nodded slowly. My mom wants me to be a doctor, but I want to be a writer. She says that's not practical. Is being a doctor what you want? Or what she wants? What she wants. But she's paying for college, so, Maya, living someone else's dreams is torture, even if you're successful at it. Trust me. She left thinking about that, and I hoped she'd choose herself over her mother's expectations. I'd learned that lesson too late, and too expensively. 3 months into teaching, I got an email from Lauren. "I heard you went back to teaching. Jeffrey told me. I'm glad. That's who you should have been all along," I wrote back. "I became who you wanted and lost everything. Now I'm being who I should have been, and I'm finally okay with that. I hope you're happy with your teacher." She responded the next day. "I am, and I'm sorry I made you think you weren't enough. You were always enough. I was the one who wasn't ready for what we had." I closed the email and felt something release in my chest. Forgiveness, maybe. For her, and for myself. We'd both been wrong. She'd said I was mediocre. I'd believed her, and tried to become someone else. Both of us had destroyed something real, chasing something we thought we wanted. My brother Cameron visited in October, brought his family. His daughter Emma was 10 now, gap-toothed and excited about everything. "Uncle Daniel, Dad says you teach about wars and stuff?" "I do. Want to hear about ancient Rome?" "Yeah." I told her about gladiators and emperors, and she listened with wide eyes. After she went to play in the yard, Cameron pulled me aside. "You're different, better, like yourself again. I'm trying to be. I spent 3 years being someone I hated. Now I'm just trying to remember who I was before I destroyed him. You're getting there. I can see it." He squeezed my shoulder. "I'm proud of you for walking away from all that money. Money doesn't mean anything if you're miserable earning it. I'd learned that lesson at $400,000 a year. Expensive education. That Thanksgiving, I volunteered at a food bank instead of working. Served meals to people who needed them, talked to homeless veterans who knew more about history than most students, felt useful in a way sales had never made me feel useful. One veteran, Thomas, noticed my teaching association shirt. "You're a teacher?" "Yeah, history. I wanted to be a teacher. Before Vietnam. After I came back, I couldn't focus enough to finish college. We talked for an hour about what he'd experienced, and I learned more about the war from him than any textbook could teach. When I left, he shook my hand and said, "Thank you for teaching, for helping kids understand. That matters more than people think." Driving home, I thought about Lauren saying I was mediocre. Thomas thought teaching mattered. My students thought it mattered. I'd thought it mattered before someone convinced me it wasn't enough. Maybe adequate was actually extraordinary in its own way. Christmas came. I spent it with Cameron's family, watching Emma open presents and feeling like myself for the first time in years. No client calls, no sales pressure, no pretending to be someone I wasn't, just being Daniel the teacher, Daniel the uncle, Daniel, the person who existed beyond productivity. On New Year's Eve, I made a resolution. Never again would I let someone else define my worth. Not a spouse, not a boss, not society's idea of success. I'd be who I was, and anyone who thought that wasn't enough could leave. Dr. Liu called it healthy boundaries. I called it survival. Winter semester started, and one of my students, Devin Wright, came to me with a problem. His dad wanted him to study business. Devin wanted to study archaeology. My dad says that's a waste of time, that I'll be poor my whole life. Will you be happy? I asked. Digging up the past? Discovering history? Yeah, but he's right. I probably won't make much money. I make $48,000 a year teaching. My ex-wife thought that was mediocre. But I love what I do, and I sleep well at night. Meanwhile, I spent 3 years making 10 times that much and hating every second. Which one sounds better to you? Devin thought about it. Can I ask what happened? With your wife? I told him the abbreviated version. Wife said I was mediocre. I tried to become something else, lost everything including her, came back to teaching. So, being yourself didn't work? Being myself worked fine. Trying to be what someone else wanted destroyed me. There's a difference. Devin chose archaeology. His dad was furious. Called me to complain that I'd encouraged his son to throw away his future. I told him Devin's future was his own to build, not his father's to dictate. The dad hung up on me. 3 months later, Devin came back and said his dad had apologized, said he'd been pushing his own failed dreams onto his son. You helped me stand up to him. Thank you. More students came with similar problems. Parents pushing careers they didn't want. Pressure to be practical instead of passionate. I became the teacher kids came to when they needed someone to tell them being themselves was okay. I'd learned that lesson expensively enough to teach it for free. In March, I ran into Ashton Burke at a restaurant. He was with colleagues, drinking expensive wine, talking too loud about deals. When he saw me, he came over. Daniel, how's the teaching? Good, really good. Making that big teacher money? He laughed, and his colleagues laughed with him. What are you pulling in now? 50 grand? 48, but I'm happy, which is more than I could say making 300,000. Ashton's smile faded. Come on, man. You don't actually believe that. Money matters. It matters. But it's not everything. I spent 3 years learning that. I stood to leave. Good luck with your deals. Walking away, I heard one of his colleagues say, that guy was VP of sales? What happened? Ashton responded, had some kind of breakdown. Gave up everything to teach kids. They laughed. I kept walking. Let them laugh. I'd been one of them once, and I'd been miserable. Now I was me again, and their mockery couldn't touch that. April brought standardized testing and all the stress that entailed. My students worked hard, and I saw them growing not just in knowledge, but in confidence. Maya Patel decided to major in creative writing despite her mother's objections. Devin Wright applied to archaeology programs. A quiet girl named Alice Tran started raising her hand in class discussions. Small victories that mattered more than any sales award. End of the school year came fast. My students took their AP exams, and most passed. Principal Harris told me I'd been nominated for Teacher of the Year. Your students say you changed their lives, that you helped them choose themselves over everyone else's expectations. I learned that lesson the hard way. Figure I should pass it on. I didn't win Teacher of the Year, but 3 students gave me thank you cards that meant more than any plaque. Maya wrote, you taught me history, but also taught me to be myself. Thank you for that. That summer, 4 years after Lauren said she'd married the wrong person, I got a wedding invitation from her. She was marrying Jeffrey. The invitation was beautiful, expensive cardstock with elegant calligraphy. I almost didn't go, but something made me RSVP yes. The wedding was outdoors at a vineyard. Lauren looked stunning in a simple white dress. Jeffrey looked happy and comfortable in a suit he'd probably owned for years. I sat in the back, watching them exchange vows about choosing each other every day, about being partners, about building a life together. They meant the words. I could tell. When they kissed, people cheered. I clapped along, feeling genuinely happy for, her. She'd found what she needed, and it wasn't money or ambition. It was someone who showed up, who was present, who was himself without apology. Everything I'd been before I destroyed it. At the reception, Lauren found me at my table. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I'm glad you're happy, really. I heard you're teaching again, that you left sales. Yeah. Turns out I was right the first time about who I was supposed to be. She sat in the empty chair beside me. I'm sorry for what I said. About marrying the wrong person. I was wrong, and I've regretted those words ever since. You weren't entirely wrong. You did marry the wrong person. Because I wasn't strong enough to be myself when you challenged it. I became what I thought you wanted, and it destroyed us both. You became what I said I wanted without checking if I actually meant it. I was frustrated, Daniel. Venting. I didn't want you to quit teaching and become some corporate drone. I know that now. Took me 4 years and a lot of therapy to figure it out. I smiled at her. But I'm okay now. I'm me again. The adequate, mediocre version that actually likes himself. She touched my hand briefly. That version was never mediocre. I was just too immature to see it. Jeffrey came over, friendly and warm, and thanked me for coming. Lawrence told me a lot about you, about what you went through. Ancient history, I said, meaning it. I'm glad you two found each other. I left the reception early, drove home, and sat on my small apartment balcony. 4 years ago, Lauren's words had destroyed me. I'd killed the person I was, become someone I hated, lost everything chasing a version of success that meant nothing. But sitting there in the evening air, making $48,000 a year, single and content, I realized something. I'd needed to break completely to rebuild correctly. The person I was before Lauren's words had been good but fragile, too easily swayed by someone else's opinion. The person I'd become in sales was successful but hollow, no substance beyond numbers. The person I was now had been built from the wreckage of both, strong enough to be himself without apology, content with adequate, comfortable with mediocre, if it meant being real. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Mr. Holloway? This is Alice Tran from your history class. Alice, hi. What's up? I just wanted to tell you something. I got into Columbia, full scholarship, and it's because you helped me believe I was smart enough to try. My chest tightened with emotion I hadn't felt in sales. Alice, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. I wanted you to know because you told me being adequate was actually extraordinary if you were being yourself. That stuck with me. Thank you for teaching me that. We talked for a few more minutes, and after hanging up, I sat there thinking about impact. In sales, my impact was measured in revenue and commission. Dollars earned, deals closed, quarterly targets met. Numbers that meant everything and nothing. In teaching, my impact was Alice getting into Columbia, Devin choosing archaeology, Maya becoming a writer, students finding themselves and believing in who they were. That couldn't be measured in dollars, but it meant everything. I'd spent 3 years being the wrong person trying to prove I was enough, earned hundreds of thousands of dollars, got promotions and awards, achieved everything society said mattered, and I'd been miserable every second. Now I was making barely enough to cover rent and student loans, drove an old car, lived in a small apartment, spent my evenings grading papers instead of closing deals, and I was happy, actually happy. Lauren had been wrong when she said she married the wrong person. She'd married exactly the right person, but then she'd made him doubt himself, and he'd destroyed who he was trying to become who she wanted. They'd both been wrong, and they'd both paid for it. But the story didn't end with their divorce or her remarriage. It ended with me, 4 years later, finally understanding something crucial. There is no wrong person to be, only wrong reasons for changing who you are. I'd changed for Lauren, for money, for external validation, all wrong reasons. The person I was now had changed for himself, to rebuild what he'd destroyed, to remember what mattered. That was the right reason. My phone buzzed with a text from Cameron. Barbecue Saturday, bring your grading. Emma wants to hear more history stories. I wrote back, I'll be there. Then I opened my laptop and started planning next year's curriculum. I'd teach the same wars, the same historical patterns, the same lessons about human nature and power, but I'd also teach the thing I'd learned expensively. Success isn't measured in salary or status. It's measured in whether you can look at yourself and like who you see. I liked who I saw now, the adequate teacher, the mediocre salary earner, the person who'd been broken and rebuilt and was finally comfortable in his own skin. Lauren was right when she said she'd married the wrong person. Wrong for her at that moment anyway. But I'd been exactly the right person for myself, and I'd forgotten that trying to please someone else. Took me 4 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to remember. Expensive lesson, but worth every cent. Saturday came. I went to Cameron's barbecue with a stack of papers to grade. Emma asked about the Roman Empire, and I told her about Julius Caesar and Brutus and betrayal. She listened with wide eyes, and when I finished, she said, Uncle Daniel, you're really good at teaching. Thank you, Emma. Are you rich? The question caught me off guard. No, teachers don't make much money. But you're happy, right? Dad says being happy matters more than being rich. I looked at Cameron, who smiled and shrugged. Yeah, Emma, I'm happy. Then you're doing it right. She ran off to play, leaving me with her. Simple wisdom, doing it right. Not by society's standards or Lauren's expectations or corporate measures of success, but by the only metric that actually mattered. Was I being myself, and did that make me happy? Yes. 4 years after my wife told me she'd married the wrong person, after I became a different person she hated even more, after I destroyed myself and rebuilt from scratch, I could finally answer yes. I was doing it right. The adequate, mediocre, happy version of myself. Exactly who I was supposed to be all along. That evening, I got an email from Principal Harris. The school board approved a small raise for next year. You'll be making 51,000. I know it's not much, but I wanted you to know you're valued. I wrote back, it's perfect. Thank you. Because it was. Not the salary, but being valued for the right reasons. For teaching well, for impacting students, for being good at something that mattered. That was worth more than any six-figure corporate job. I closed my laptop and looked around my small apartment. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive. Just me, my books, my grading, and my life. The life I'd chosen after trying everyone else's version of who I should be. Lauren had said I'd married the wrong person, and she'd been right. Wrong for her. But I'd finally become the right person for myself, and that was the only version that mattered. The adequate teacher with the mediocre salary and the extraordinary life built on being exactly who he was supposed to be. Nothing more, nothing less, just enough.